One second, 1 second. Okay, yes. So I have to mute myself because when I put it in the YouTube, there's like my sound comes after. So very good, everybody. Here, let me introduce you all to Claudia Bauer. So Claudia Bauer, thank you so much. She helped us so much for Worldwide Ballet class. She write for us in the beginning of everything. So everybody knew us more because of her. And then Claudia Bauer is a writer and critic for the San Francisco Chronicle, Dance Magazine, Point Magazine, and dancestuff.com, and much more. So she's incredible. And then guess what? She's an amazing writer, and also she's an incredible human being. So welcome, Claudia Bauer, and thank you so much for being here with us.
Wow, back at you. Thank you so much, Diego, and welcome everybody to our Worldwide Ballet Class webinar on online auditions. We have an amazing panel today, and I will be introducing them now. First off is Larissa Savelyev, the founder and artistic director of Youth America Grand Prix. Diego, is she around? There she is. We have Hope Muir, who is the artistic director of Charlotte Ballet.
Good evening.
Thank you. Christopher Charles McDaniel, dancer and social media coordinator with Dance Theater of Harlem.
Hey everyone, how are you?
International dancer Sebastien Vinet.
Hi everybody.
Cincinnati Ballet soloist and Worldwide Ballet class accompanist David Morse. And my co-moderator today, Amy Brandt, who is the editor-in-chief of Point Magazine.
Hi everybody.
And Amy and Larissa are actually the sort of behind the idea for this webinar. They're really on the forefront of this online auditions, what's happening in online auditions, and Amy commissioned my story for Point about it. And that story is available for free reading on the Point website, and it has a lot of tips and information about the technical side also of putting together an online audition. For those of you who were expecting to see Margaret Tracy, she had a conflict and wasn't able to join us today. So we'll start with Larissa. Larissa, you've been involved in online auditions for several months now. What are directors and teachers saying right now about where things are at? Do they see them continuing for some time in the future? And are they successful? Are they effective as a tool? You gotta unmute yourself there.
Sorry.
Thank you.
So, well, good evening, everybody. And I think it's very, very hot topic right now, because looks like this pandemic is not going away anytime soon, and it's mean we have to live with this situation, and most important, adapt to the situation. So from what I understand and from what I heard from a lot of directors, they're in extremely difficult position. And I want anybody who will try to audition will try to understand what is other person in the other end looking for. So the directors are, so they have to in a position where they have to plan the season without knowing when the season happened and how many dancers they will need, because they also don't know which program they will be able to do. So, which brings them to the point, would we need a full corps de ballet? Would we need half corps de ballet? Would we need that many dancers for that long, or we need a shorter period of time? So, but what the young dancer has to keep in mind, so it's mean when, let's say, director of X ballet company in X ballet city are opening. Now they're gonna call all the dancers which they was employed with a company before first. But at this point, a lot of dancers may be not available simply for reason Somebody may be pregnant, somebody may be injured, somebody may be actually changed their mind and doesn't want to dance anymore, or many different occasions. And so that's mean spots will open up. And all the directors say this, the spots will open up. It's just nobody knows when and nobody knows how many. And the young dancers has to keep this in mind. And I think two quality our director looking right now more than ever, the dancers who are willing and the dancers who are able to do pretty much anything they have to do in a very short period of time. So because nobody knows how much rehearsal time they will have, so it's mean they have to jump in, know the choreography, and be willing to do pretty much anything they've been asked. And that's what pretty much I'm hearing from different directors from Europe to US. And it doesn't mean the situation will not change, but right now the dancers will have to understand, most likely they will not be offered full-time contract. And they have to be okay with that. Just for simple reason, they have to make sure they just put their foot in the door. And keep in mind later, it will change. It will definitely change. But what was everybody looking, for example, last year, may not necessarily the reality right now. And that's where we are.
So my takeaway from that is that there are opportunities that perhaps dancers might not think are there, and even new opportunities that didn't exist before in terms of professional companies.
So absolutely, you're exactly right. So it's a company director used to audition only by not only, but most of the time they audition live. So right now, this is not available. So, but that's mean the places they never used to come for audition, like the company, they never wasn't this particular places, or maybe they didn't even consider to hire these dancers by video. It's mean now this opportunity is available for the dancers. So, it's life is give and take. So yes, we lost some opportunity, but I also think some opportunity are open up right now.
Great. And I know Amy is pretty, she has her finger on the pulse of what's happening with students who are contacting her through the magazine. Amy, unmute.
Thank you. It's actually really encouraging to hear that, Larissa, because a lot of the concerns I'm hearing from young dancers is that they're seeing that a lot of companies are working with small groups of dancers, and they're afraid that companies are going to shrink in size and that job opportunities will be fewer whenever things pick back up again. So, I think it is encouraging to hear what you have to say about that. May not necessarily be the case. I know there is a lot of anxiety about, what's going to happen, and will there be positions open, and will my career get off the ground on time, or will it be delayed by a few years? Do I need to take a gap year, etc.? I'm hearing a lot of that. I'm also hearing, of course, a lot of dancers are concerned about that. They're afraid they've lost a lot of ground from having to train in these limited conditions for so long. And they're also a bit concerned about their space and presenting themselves in their sort of homemade dance space. So that's, one thing that we could maybe talk about later today, about, your space that you're auditioning in if you're doing these virtual auditions and you don't have a studio access. But another thing that I am hearing too is that this virtual method of auditioning kind of opens their world up a lot. Places where they used to have to physically travel to, it's now possible to audition for a company that may have seemed out of reach financially, or time-wise or otherwise. So those are some positive things, that I'm hearing from young dancers as well. is that there are some opportunities opening up through this situation. So, and I know, Sebastian, you had hosted an online audition not too long ago, correct?
Yes, I did. I hosted an online audition for Chilean students. I'm from Chile originally. I live in Mexico City right now. I danced with San Francisco, Houston Ballet, and a few other companies. And for the last year, I've been dedicating myself to freelance life, traveling around the world, teaching, guesting, doing different galas. And even though it's been a very hard year, this 2020 year, it's been a new adventure. I like to look at it that way instead of trying to look at it at a wasted year or a hard year. So I've used this pandemic to really reinvent myself and create opportunities for the Chilean students, especially ballet dancers that might not have the opportunity to go to study at the Washington Ballet or a school in Europe or in Asia in general. So when the whole thing started back in March, obviously all my shows got canceled. All the touring that I have for this year got canceled. So I started to kind of think about ideas on how to reinvent myself, not to only keep busy every day, but also help dancers, professional dancers and students. I like creating opportunities for everybody. I think our mission as artists and everybody who's involved in our world, our responsibility is to keep our world alive, right? Because we create it. So I decided to create an online audition that would give out scholarships to the Washington Ballet, Ballet West in Scotland, a school here in Guadalajara, Mexico, and and that's it. So 3 schools that gave out 9 scholarships for students in Chile. So what I did is that I organized an online audition via Zoom. I called a few of my friends. They were the jury. Ana Sofia Scheller was part of the jury. Romina Contreras, she's the principal in Chile. Another principal from Chile. And then Marcelino Sambe was going to be also part of the judging panel, but he couldn't make it because of he was traveling, I think, that day. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to create an opportunity to give access to the Chilean students to experience an international summer program. Even though it was via Zoom, the experience was going to be kind of similar in the way they worked, the way they dress, and kind of get them ready in the future in case they were going to have the opportunity to audition, personally. And it turned out great. Actually, I wasn't expecting to have such a big blowout. More than 250 students sign up. What I did is I did a pre-selection with through pictures to kind of understand what the level was in Chile. Even though I'm from there, I left 16 years ago, so I'm not really sure what the level is when it comes to technique. And I was very surprised. I saw some talented people there that definitely could have the opportunity when everything goes back to normal to go and audition and go through an audition for the Washington Ballet or ABT or the New York City Ballet and actually make it through to study at their prestigious schools. And but my main focus with Chile all the time, whenever I create opportunities, I created a gala 5 years ago, is always to kind of make not only the students, but the people who is in charge of ballet, the parents, the families, even the dancers, understand how our life is and understand what, the career of a ballet dancer is. So that was the main idea of this audition, to kind of get them ready for a future possible physical audition for them to go attend, right? So kind of get them ready on how to dress, how to do their hair, how to wear a number, how to feel judged by a judging panel, which is not easy. I've been there. I competed at Pretty Little Sun back in 2009, and then I was a judge this year there. So it was my first time judging. And it is very, very hard. And I feel, even though we don't have the space right now to kind of demonstrate what we can do, especially when it comes to big jumps and stuff like that, I think it's a little bit easier to do it through a screen than doing personally, because when you have a person in front of you looking at you all the time and writing things down, things can be a little bit, nerve-wracking. But yeah, it turned out very well, and I was very happy with the results. And I give out 9 scholarships, and the students, I hope they learn a lot and they had a great time and a great experience that hopefully is going to make them grow as a person and as artists, which is my, it was my main goal with that.
So that again speaks to the new opportunities for the dancers. I'd really like to turn to Hope, and Hope, get your perspective on, I know you don't have a ton of experience with online auditions, but as you're listening to this, what do you feel like are the opportunities for you as an artistic director? Do you see yourself using this medium?
Well, I mean, we've used online auditions to pre-screen when we do our in-person auditions. So there is kind of like, there's a process to going through and highlighting people that you're interested in. I'd like to go back to Larissa's point about repertoire. It's very real situation that we don't know what we're going to be able to do. We don't know the numbers that we're going to be allowed on stage, if there's going to be touching allowed, if we're still physical distancing. Repertoire does have a lot to, it is driving a lot of the decisions around casting, around the numbers in the company. Yes, I've had 3 dancers decide to retire through this pandemic just because they had thought about it already. They were at home, they were, you know, reflecting, and they don't want to come back. So the openings are there, but then it is, what are we going to be able to perform? And as we're not generating any income at the moment, sometimes those places won't be filled for a while until perhaps we can make the repertoire a wee bit more robust. Because right now we're really working to a skeleton and trying to see, like, just trying to get a show on somewhere with someone in the audience or virtually or whatever. So it is ever shifting. The opportunities are there. I feel like directors are going to do one of 2 things when a position becomes available. They're going to look at the repertoire and they're going to say, okay, I lost that person, I need to replace that person. Or they might look at the opportunity to take someone completely different, a completely different quality, maybe even from a male to a female, change that gender of the contract. Whatever they feel that they're going to be needing at that time, I think will be driving the decisions. And if we don't know what we're doing, sometimes you might just be looking for an interesting individual just to find that dynamic. I will say that the biggest problem I see or anticipate with online auditions is that company dynamic, bringing in the right personality to a studio with your dancers that are there and established is super important. And there's going to have to be some kind of moments in this virtual auditions, you know, however we do it, however we decide to do it, where there's going to have to be some interaction. How they take direction, how they perhaps, you know, communicate with other dancers. It might even be like a Zoom get to know you, because honestly, the personality is just as important as the raw talent, you know, to see how people fit into the dynamic of the group. So it's going to be really interesting. I think it's going to give a lot of opportunity for creativity. I never want to see anyone do bar on an audition video because I've seen it in live auditions that someone's beautiful at the bar and they walk into the center and they can't stand up. You know, it's so you can't really gauge anything from that. You need to work with people. So I think there are, I know you're going to get into the nuts and bolts of that later, but I think the opportunity for creativity, because one thing this pandemic has done, it's really humanized people in our industry, you know, people that you never would be in their homes. You don't know if they have pets or children. And what's happened with all of these Zooms meetings, I have found in particular in our organization that there's a real humanization. And that I think is going to be super interesting to watch in these digital auditions, because that's going to play a huge role in how we work and move forward.
Sorry, I didn't know who was, we're working out our co-moderation here. Yeah, I think that's interesting because in a way you have sort of 2 conflicting things. You're saying that on the one hand, it's allowing people to bring in their personality, and on the other hand, it's a little bit hard to judge the personality dynamic of people being together. So it's definitely a different kind of challenge, and people that we talked to for the Point article talked about the same thing, that that is really the the challenging part is figuring out what the chemistry is going to be between people. The dancer experience, this is also, I also want to point out, this is also about a students doing online auditions, not just company dancers. So I think that there's a slightly different criteria. They would really have to do the bar and the more academic part of it to audition for a school via an online.
Yes, absolutely. But
Yeah.
for students graduating this generation that, you know, feel that they're going to be lost, they're not. I just think that, you know, directors, we've talked about it all over the world, you know, where you're looking at sometimes at the age of a dancer, you know, coming into that first year quarter ballet role. And, you know, we've spoken about that's not going to be a thing. We're going to be looking for that this year, people that perhaps missed that window or, you know, feel like that they're starting late. So everyone's very cognizant of it, and everyone's very very protective to not lose this generation of 2020 that are graduating, and to still have a platform for them somehow when we get back to some new normal.
So I think we're ready to start transitioning into a little bit more of those technical aspects. And we actually have a question from Gemma Smith, who says, do we think that auditions will be live Zoom classes or pre-recorded material? And what Amy and I were, what we gleaned from the interviews in the story was that there's a component of both. And, you know, you've talked, Hope, about screening people via video materials. And, you know, Larissa, in the article, we also talked about that sometimes that moves into a live Zoom thing, or where people can ask to see a follow-up. Does anybody have experience with that? David and Christopher, do you also have any familiarity with that from a dancer's perspective?
Well, I can say we have example when student took the Zoom class, and it was not even live audition, it was just simple Zoom class, but she was interacting so well with the teacher, and she was following the direction like so well, so she actually received full year scholarship. And I think for students especially, they have to understand the following the direction and listening to corrections and following the choreography or the steps is one of the key components right now. Like it was always important, but now is as important as, I mean, more important than ever. And we actually have experience when somebody received full year scholarship after one Zoom class, it was a follow-up Zoom class, and then it was a full year scholarship offer.
That's great to hear. So Christopher is raising his hand, and I was actually going to just hand you the spotlight, Christopher, because this is really starting to get into that technical area.
Yeah, you know, I feel like for students, the one thing I want to really let students know during this time, and I remind any class I teach, that we're really all in this together. You know, where we as teachers are not used to, you know, being on a screen and stuff like that, so we're all adjusting. But I think that when we're in person with the student, we have certain expectations about how they, you know, take bar and how they present the foot and the this and the that. But I feel like this is an opportunity to kind of speak to a different part of the training of a dancer. You know, dancers are often just expected to smile and nod, and you do what you're told. But I think this is a time where, you know, speaking about personalities, where the dancer can develop their ability to interact and engage with their teacher and interact with other people, even, you know, through the screen. How are you presenting yourself and talking about your art? One of the things that I feel really fortunate about having grown up at Dance Theater of Harlem is that Arthur Mitchell always required us to be able to do an interview and to talk about why we love what we do and how to present ourselves in that way. So it was more than just your technique. So it was really the whole package. But moving into more of like the actual technical taking class, I went full throttle and built a little studio at home, and I was lucky to have the space to do that and put a full mirror and a sprung floor and everything in, because I felt like I had already lost a bit of time because I was coming back from injury on tour. So and I built the sprung floor with pool noodles and plywood. And this whole process really called on me to be a little braver and a little more creative, where we're used to just walking into a studio and everything is set up for us, or a theater, and we are just responsible for ourselves. Now we're all having to tap into new skills, and we're having to make it work for ourselves. So my real advice to the students are to identify a space that is safe enough to do a full bar and some center work. We all know that most people are not going to be able to do grand allegro, but then that's on us, as teachers, to find ways to make up for it. Maybe we do some more grand battements in center or whatever, so we, kind of get those things in. Um, but also, this is a time to really kind of, talk to your parents and make that extra investment if you can, to maybe get a small, move a TV screen into that room that you're working in, so you have a bigger screen to see your Zoom classes on, and speakers and things like that. This summer, I worked with a lot of students in very different circumstances, in terms of economics, and I found myself a lot of times wanting to ask a student to move this over, or can you ask whoever that is to not be in that space, and we actually don't want to get into that. So sometimes I think the students are already coming in like afraid, like, well, my mom is in the living room and she's sitting right there and it's embarrassing or whatever. I think that part of communicating, that's one thing that's important. The students have to know that it's safe to say, hey, this is the best that I can do. My mom is going to be in the background. The dogs might bark, whatever the situation is. So we have to be really cognizant of each person's situation. But I do think that if a student has the ability to get, better equipment in terms of HDMI cords and different adapters and chargers and all of that kind of stuff, it's really gonna make the experience a little better. Yeah.
Amy, you were talking earlier about some of those access issues, and I think here would be a great opportunity to bring that
Yeah,
up.
yeah, that's one thing that I've also heard a lot of, is how COVID has really kind of put a spotlight on the different backgrounds of dancers, and when everyone is seeing you in your living room and seeing the differences between someone who's has a full studio with Marley floor in their basement, and is someone who's dancing on a really small square of Marley or cardboard or something, whatever they could put, shower pan liner. Um, and that's one thing. I mean, you answered nicely, Christopher, is that, that I was wondering, how much does that matter, the space that the dancer is in when you're watching and trying to evaluate them online? Do you take that into account, or or not?
Claudia, could I jump in? Yeah, kind of to Hope's point, and to Larissa's point. Ruben and I have spoken about this a little bit, just sort of through the worldwide ballet classes, but it's when we're in this restricted circumstance and we don't have the opportunity to work on our triple soda basque and things like that. I feel like I've seen, just across worldwide ballet class, a real shift in folks' mentality towards the intellectual part of what we do, like the sort of mind body connection, and the care and placing care in detail and things like that. Which I think a lot of that, I'm happy about that, because I think my favorite dancers to watch and my favorite dancers to work with are always ones that are really, really thoughtful dancers. And I think that kind of, Larissa, how you were saying that it's going to be so important for folks to be able to listen and take correction and apply it in a detailed, thoughtful way, is something that I hope folks are able to tap into right now, because I just I'm no company director or anything like that. I'm not the one holding these auditions, but I would think that would be something really valuable to see in a dancer, whether it was, you did a bar and then maybe you, like on Worldwide Ballet Class, I created that little piece where we were, I was teaching a little bit of repertoire. You could kind of really see this cool interaction between me and the folks on Zoom, and see, the different levels and the different abilities to pick up detail and pick up facings and things like epaulement or whatever the detail is. But it does come through quite clearly of, wow, this person's really, really getting what I'm saying, or they're really picking this up. And I think that's probably something that directors and folks like Sebastian giving out scholarships would be really interested in seeing, is that real ability to listen carefully and apply those things in a detailed way.
Christopher, did you have something?
Yeah, and I agree that it's so important to see that interaction and that detail. In addition, I feel like we definitely have to find a way, again, to communicate to students as they're thinking about auditioning, that it's okay if they don't have the best setup. So I think one of the things that I've been kind of thinking about is, when there are students who may not be able to be on camera and do the full class and stuff like that, or they're limited in space, do we have a component to our training that is, okay, you're still a part of this class, but for this amount of time you'll just be seated and you'll take notes, or I want you to watch and look at how people are picking up details or things like that. I think this is a time that we can kind of add to the training, because I've seen some students are in hallways and their parents are on another device just watching them in the hallway to make sure that it's okay. But that passion, and that obviously makes you as a teacher, you're like, they're meeting me there, I'm gonna go with it. But then I feel like we have to be real about, if we're looking at some kids who are showing that extra commitment and getting the Marley and getting the this and getting the that, are we favoring them? Or that, you know what I mean? Are we, that's something that I know for sure I ran into when I started building out the studio, and some of my friends were just like, oh, well, here you go, and I had to think about that. Not everyone has that ability, but it should be made known that everyone can still contribute. And on the student level, that's so much harder. But yeah.
I don't think the studio size will really matter for the company or school directors. So what will matter is like engagement and like what students project. So I think it's way more important, and everybody, everybody's super understanding of the situation right now. So don't forget, the company or school directors, they have a family too. They might have a kids, they might have a dogs who bark, they might have, significant other who also do other projects. So everybody in the same boat. We all here together in the same boat. So nobody has any special situation. So yes, somebody maybe has a little bigger studio, but it really does not matter for the auditions. So but if you can, what I suggest for the students, if you can, maybe take a look before you shoot your audition video, take a look how your room looks, and maybe if you have some extra unnecessary stuff, just to try to clean them up. It doesn't have to be bigger, but at least try to make it least destructive as possible. So that's what I'll suggest. So it's clean as possible background, in the situation where you are in, of course, so in the conditions you're in.
Oh, go ahead.
I would just add to that. I agree with everything everyone's saying. But I've found teaching these live classes, on Zoom a lot, and trying to negotiate everyone's different space and being very aware of that. It's been a wonderful opportunity to give the dancers a budget, halfway through an exercise, to either move back, move around wherever they need to be. So, as teachers, we're doing things forward and back, and we're reversing things, and we're suturing underneath ourselves. But sometimes I just set something that does travel, and then they'll have a budget of £8 to get back to where they need to be to restart. And that can be pretty much free form, and it's actually quite interesting to see the creativity and, you know, the choreographic skills, or how they negotiate that time to, you know, get back in space or move forward in space, or, you know, just to figure out how they can be safe. And that's the other thing, is safety. Whatever, you know, whatever you decide to do, if you're sending a video in to be considered or for an audition, or if you're in a class and you don't have the space to do that diagonal safely, or you don't have the space to jump and do a tour, just don't, you know. That's the really, really, like, I think people need to have that autonomy to be able to know that we understand that everyone's in the same boat, and to make those decisions and be very, very practical and safe. Like, I don't want to see anyone, you know, shenanigans into, you know, a kitchen wall or something. But yeah, so I think it's creating opportunities to see creativity in people and how they redefine their space to make it work for them. The biggest problem is musicality, because as we know, and David will attest to this, no one's doing anything at the same time. So how do you as an informed viewer watching, trying to, you know, audition people, get any sense of musicality? That's a huge, huge challenge. I'm sure David has something to say about that.
I know there's some mathematician out there working out the formula for how long of a delay. And I mean, it's just, yeah, of course it's a nightmare. And I think for the most part, teachers are understanding, but I do understand that it's gotta be tough in your position, Hope, if you're trying to watch somebody and it's like, okay, are they way off the music here? Or is it just, you know, cause it doesn't just have to do with your internet connection, but it has to do with the other person's internet connection. And you know, Diego's internet, it's everybody, it is so difficult. And I do wonder about that part of it, that, you know, we talk about this kind of like multiple pronged approach that perhaps there would be a live component, but I think you would have to also see some pre-recorded materials to get that feeling, because I mean, Claudia, you and I spoke earlier in the year about how critical musicality is in a dancer, and what a huge part of your artistry that is, and that could be a real make or break, I would think, when you're looking at somebody. It's like, wow, she's beautiful, but oh my gosh, she's always like 3 or 4 counts behind. This is terrible. So I think that there would have to be that combination of that live component, so you can see the person and feel how they interact with you and all of that, with the understanding that they're going to be a little off the music, almost certainly, but then to also have the pre-recorded stuff to see, like, wow, she like really hit that accent, or whatever the musicality would be.
Luca Masala, we interviewed him for the auditions article, and he actually addressed that issue. And what he did was he would create some choreography set to music and record it and post it and say, please do this, tape yourself doing this to this music, and turn that in as a component of your online audition. So certainly, in addition to a recorded bar and a recorded, you know, some sort of variation or something, students or dancers could also do that. And that may also go back to this creativity theme that everybody is bringing up, because he brought that up too, which was, you know, people are frustrated dancing in a limited space, and maybe there's furniture or dogs or people or what have you. But what he thought was so informative about that was the way people negotiated that, and could they reframe it as a creative opportunity? Could they work with the furniture? Could they work with the dog? Could they work it into what they were doing and show resilience and imagination and spontaneity and sort of a refreshing sense, I think, of lack of pretension, I think. And that may actually contribute to showing somebody's personality and character, Hope, that you were talking about. Maybe that's an opportunity.
I wanted to, Larissa and I, when we first started talking about this, I don't know, back in June, you know, one thing that you had mentioned, just talking about kind of having things pre-recorded or in advance, we talked a little bit about, you know, having like an online profile, basically, that these dancers, you know, can prepare themselves by having things ready, you know, links from performances, or from YGP or whatnot, you know, kind of ready to go in a package so that they're able to quickly send them out to whoever they're, you know, auditioning for. And that's one thing I thought maybe we could talk about, is what makes a good virtual audition package.
Well, interesting question. So like definitely, I think combination, a little bit of recording material. So whatever they have, and again, they can also be creative and smart about this and edit it in a certain way so they look the best they could. Again, a little bit of class if you are student. If you professionals, I completely behind Hope. Most of the directors does not want to look at the bar and they want to see more movements. And you can do a lot of movements even like without any space. You know, you can show your, especially your upper body. So like, I think combination and versatility, that's what I think they should try to bring. So to show, okay, we can do classics, okay, we can do like this style, we can do hip hop, we can do, we can follow this choreography, we can follow this choreography, because I think that's what everybody's looking right now. Somebody who is super versatile. So if in case something happened and like space open up, they can put this person there, and person should be chameleon, should be really like the became who artistic director or choreographer would like them to be at this particular moment in time. So, and I think that's what they have to look when they put their profile. That's the kind of criteria I think they should look for. But maybe we should ask the Hope what she thinks as a director, what she would like to see.
Sure. I mean, it's gonna open up so many opportunities for people to audition for so many companies, but then it's going to be a lot more work because you have to bespoke your audition to each company. Because, you know, what I ask for is I ask for a classical variation and a contemporary variation. Now, the choices these individuals make on what variation is more revealing to me than what they do in the solo. Because if they come with this super, you know, classical variation that Charlotte Ballet is never going to do, I have no place for them, right? We're a company of 28. We're not going to do a massive production. And if you want to do Bayadere, you should go to another company. So it's really, really important that they look at the flavor or the repertoire of the company and make really, really solid choices on what they decide to send in. So yes, to be versatile, 100%, but versatile in a way that suits the repertoire of that company at that time and that director. So even though you're gonna have so many more opportunities digitally to audition for companies abroad and all over the States, I would say be very, very careful that you make sure that for each company you do your research and that your solos somehow reflect, or the director can see you in the repertoire by the choices you make and what you film, you know, because otherwise if I see something that I know, I mean, I can't judge, but you know, to be that hybrid, that dancer that can do classical and contemporary, 100% Larissa, versatility is really key.
And what about for schools then? Maybe Sebastian, maybe Christopher can talk about what would be the components of a school and like how could a dancer tailor what they're doing to maximize that opportunity. Anybody? Unmute, Sebastian?
I was gonna let Sebastian go ahead.
Oh, okay. We can't hear you, Sebastian.
Mute yourself.
Unmute. All right, well, while he's muted, Christopher, would you like to talk?
Sure.
Oh, there we go.
Well, I agree with Hope, excuse me, especially about, you know, with the company level and knowing what repertoire. I think for students, it's probably important to do something simple and classical that shows off their technique and their understanding of their body and their body as it pertains to the technique. and then something contemporary that showed them as a mover. So I definitely think those kind of standards are, probably good. One of the things that just kind of jumped out to me when we're talking about making an online profile, I just remember for a long time dancing in companies where we were not allowed to have videos of our performances. So that's a huge thing when it's time to, put a reel together or something, and you have not been given your footage. So I think that this whole digital, uprising right now is, a good sign for management to, let that go a little bit, and just think that we have to be able to have access to that content. Um, I I don't remember how it started, but I just got a little curious when I was younger and started working with um, just like different editing softwares. Right now, I use iMovie for a lot of the stuff I create for DTH, and I think that it's important for dancers to kind of fiddle around with that. We're all on our phones and our computers and stuff all day. Build that skill to just learn the simple way of putting a video in and editing it down and putting a title card in here and there. I think that's something super important because you may not be able to get it off to someone who can do fancy editing and stuff. Something super simple, put your videos in and be able to upload. And I think that's another skill that most dancers should have. If you're really young and you're not able to get access to the computer, but most teenage dancers know how to use a computer through and through, and I think that it's time to make that a part of our skill set.
Before we hand the mic to Sebastian, I do want to say that we go into some good detail in that in the Point article. We have a little tip section about creating your video and different techniques, and I just want to reassure everybody that it is completely doable on your phone. You don't need any fancy equipment or fancy lighting or fancy photographers. And to keeping it simple is a good idea, but definitely you need to be able to know how to do those things. So anyway, and Sebastian, then what was your experience in terms of what was sufficient?
What I found efficient for the online audition I did for the scholarships is what I did is that I divided, I think it was 60 something kids for the senior audition. So I divided a certain amount of numbers to each judge, so they weren't overwhelmed for the amount of people on little squares on the screen. And one of the things that the schools asked me the most for the judges to kind of really pay attention to, it was concentration at the end of the day, because they were going to go into an online summer program. So like we were talking in the beginning, they really wanted to see somebody focus. It wasn't more, it wasn't really about how great the instant was or how hyperextended the legs were or how high the legs were. It was mainly about seeing concentration and people that really wanted to work regardless of the conditions they had around them. And obviously coordination, something that is very hard to find sometimes, especially the use of port bras, the use of the coordination of the arms and the legs, and how the arm guides the legs, or whatever you're doing, fondues, fondues, whatever stuff you're doing. But one of the things that I treasure the most from when I was a student, it was how Houston Ballet really taught me how to sell myself in a way. So it wasn't only about the technique, it was also about how to write a resume, how to email people, how to put together an online video. When before I became a professional, I never attended an open audition, so I don't know what the experience of an open audition is. I always did invitation auditions, so I was pretty aware of how to really come up with a reel to send over to companies in order for them to invite me to audition. So that's something that was really taught specifically to everybody who was going to go audition and become a professional at Houston Ballet. And I treasure that because I use that every day now as a professional as well, especially as a freelancer. In a way, I have to sell myself to get invited to go to perform in China, to perform, as I guess, in different companies, and also understand how to communicate with people. I think that's very, very important. What I found very interesting from the audition I held for the people in Chile is that 98% of the students that wrote me didn't know how to write an email, how to introduce themselves, how to connect in a way, because usually now, especially in the era that we live now, that's the first introduction, and you can get so much through an email, you know, and how that personality, how their personality is, you know, and so many other things. And the same thing, you know, through a video, even though we're far away and we don't have the space to kind of, you know, hold a proper audition. I think you can still see it through the screen, personalities, work ethic, and all the things that you really need for somebody to join a company.
That's actually a really, really interesting point. You know, all of us, I think, in the behind the scenes world feel like we now have to be newscasters all the time. And it's like this whole different skill set for operating in the world when you're doing it through the screen every day. But I think for dancers, especially, I think you bring up such a good point, which is there are all of these other skills, this sort of sphere of skills that make somebody successful as a dancer and successful in life. And this is an opportunity. It actually requires people to work on some of those skills. And I would love to hear from anybody in the group, what are some of those skills? Because I think dancers, especially young dancers right now, are feeling really focusing on what they've lost. But this is an opportunity to gain. And it's not, it can be a little scary to work on those skills, but when you have them, it's so empowering. So what would hope, you know, what do you want to see that maybe dancers, you don't see as much in dancers, that maybe this is an opportunity to build those skills that will serve them well in a company or a school?
I think what I'd like to see more of, and it's something that is very much in the culture at Charlotte Ballet and the way we work, in that it is a conversation. The dancers do have autonomy in what we do in the studio. And, you know, I will ask someone, well, how does that feel? And they kind of, you know, in the beginning, it probably took them about a year before they would answer me, and now I can't shut them up. But it's being part of the process, you know, and that involvement. And now, because of Zoom being so difficult to read, and I'm one that really works on energy, so I find that teaching is so exhausting because I'm not getting anything back. And it's just so flat. And sometimes I just go and I'm like, please unmute yourself. Just tell me, how does this feel? Like, how are you doing? And to have that voice and to have the confidence to raise your hand and say, my space doesn't work for this exercise, but I'm going to figure it out. You know, I love that. I love that people are just, you know, saying, and like so many people have said on this call, it's been amazing to hear, we're all in this together. No one has it better than anyone else, you know, really. So, and as long as we can let people feel that, you know, that whatever they're doing and the effort they're making is being seen, and they're being seen and more importantly heard. And I think with Zoom sometimes that's the thing that's lacking is the talking. And so I hope that people get a bit more brave, and I hope that they know that the conversation is important. And if you get a chance in an audition process to work with someone, ask those questions. And because that's how I figure out if I can work with a dancer, is if whether or not they respond to the way I work. And having people be part of it, you know, holding that career in my hand is the most amazing part of my job. And dancers are super vulnerable when they give that to you. So you have to, I really encourage them, to find their voice.
Christopher, can I just interject for 1 second? We have a question. Marina says, when it comes to video audition, should we introduce ourselves and talk a little bit about who we are? If yes, before or after the dancing part? And when Larissa and I talked about this, and Luca as well, we talked about creating, you know, 15 or 30-second video that lives independently of create a modular package of video things that you can send to different people. And that way you can send that or not send that depending on what people want. But to the point that we were just talking about, you know, dancers who are accustomed to expressing themselves physically and don't have an opportunity to meet in an audition in person right now, from my opinion, and I wonder what the group would say, that can be such a great way to show that you do have that skill and that you have the confidence, and that you can do that sort of in a professional way. And I think that does show something valuable. So, Christopher, what were you going to add?
Well, first, I totally agree with that, and I think I mean, if I were looking at an audition video, I would actually want to have the person start off by introducing themselves. I have to be real, you know, a lot of times during my career, I realized I was put in situations and given opportunities that I didn't feel technically I was, you know, the most suited for. But I've heard from people who I've worked with, you know, you're fun to be with in the studio and you get me and that sort of thing. And so that opens up another opportunity for you as a student or a professional when you're able to just be someone that the choreographer or the director wants to be around. Then they can get into the nitty gritty of, okay, now I really want to help you fix this technical thing because I know that your heart is open and your mind is open. So again, it's, you know, retraining ourselves and our students to not do that thing where we're not allowed to speak and we nod and we say yes sir. You know, we have to relearn that it's okay, like Hope said. And Hope, I just appreciate hearing you say that as a director, because right now at Dance Theater of Harlem, we're so blessed that Virginia and Anna have been giving us so many opportunities to do different things and build new skills. With our online programming, DTH On Demand, there's been a team of producers who are now, we're challenging ourselves to come up with ideas for different content, different videos, different sorts of engagement, and then fulfilling it ourselves. We're emailing talent and filming it and, you know, producing it on our own computers and learning about photo credits and what's allowed to use and what's not. And when you're given an opportunity to build those skills and you know that it's a safe space to make a mistake, and then, you know, we all talk about it as a team, and then, you know, everybody grows from that. So I just really appreciate that idea of dancers having the opportunity and the space, the safe space to do something else.
I would like to add something to what Christopher said, if that's okay, that I think is great. One of the things, when I was at Pretty Little Sun in the beginning of this year, I was invited to be a judge, which was a huge surprise because obviously I was one of the youngest jury members, and obviously I was next to, you know, the artistic director of the Scala and a few other former principals from the Royal Ballet, and it was an amazing experience for me to learn. But one of the things that we discussed over lunch many times, it was that everybody, what we find, and I find it personal, you know, I find it, you know, that happens a lot as well, is that a lot of students, their goal is only to be a principal dancer. I want to be a principal dancer. I want to be a principal dancer. And that's the only way I'm going to be successful in this career. And audition or not, I think right now with the pandemic this is a great opportunity to find other skills that you might use for your dancing that might help it in the future. But at the same time, we not only need principal dancers, we need soloists, we need corps of ballet, we need producers, we need executive directors, we need directors, we need, you know, everything that kind of holds our world together and creates our world. We need it, even though if you dance for a long time or if you don't. And I think this is the best time to find that skill that might help you, you know, hopefully one day become a professional or you know, or not. But at the end of the day, it's about creating and keeping our world alive. And I think that's very, very important to use this time to find that. And we have the accessibility to it. And I think that's a blessing. You know, there are things that are hard and there are things that are great about what's going on right now. And also for companies, I think it's a great opportunity to use the digital world to bring our art form to the masses and people that have no access to a theater. You know, if we take the opportunity to create a nice product and deliver it to the masses, instead of having 800 shows at the Nutcracker, we can have 2 and then have 100,000 people online and then have, you know, 2,000 people at the theater. So I think it just depends on how we look at things. And for auditions, it's the same thing. You know, even if you want to audition or not, I think it's just about finding different skills that is going to help us in the future as dancers.
Mm-hmm. David, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, just on to Hope's point about unmuting yourself. There's been this like Zoom culture that's kind of developed over the last 6 months, and it kind of layered with dancers' tendency already to be a little bit shy and to just nod and smile and do all of that stuff. Just from a procedural standpoint, the MO has been just leave yourself muted. Everything works smoother that way, which we all understand. Of course, that is true. But if you're in maybe, and I think this would vary from situation to situation, but I think it will take folks that little bit of bravery to say like, hey, I'd like to interact, or I'd like to, you know, maybe ask a question if it's appropriate, or or to say, you know, if the director is trying to reach out for you, you're going to have to overcome that initial block, which is, okay, as a dancer, I normally wouldn't say anything. And then the secondary block that we've all now sort of developed of, oh, well, I usually just stay muted. So I think it's really important for people to think about that and just say, you know, and you got to gauge it. It's going to be case by case, but just say, maybe this is a good spot to hit that unmute button and just jump in with, if not, don't contrive it. Don't, you know, it doesn't need to be artificial or manufactured, but if you have a genuine point of interaction that you'd like to have with that director or ballet master or teacher, whatever it might be, I think we need that. Folks need that right now.
Well, Larissa and I talked a while ago about the importance of finding ways to get on people's radar when you're doing online auditions and classes, and that can be an important component of, you know, finding success and finding a place through this process. Larissa, can you talk a little bit about that? Unmute, please.
So definitely, like, being in director's radar is like very, very important, because it's just, you know, like any human being, we usually try to reach closest, you know, low-hanging fruits. That's just human like nature. So and like, again, as spas open up, like the director's like, oh, okay, I remember like so and so. And you can use all different sources from, you know, like try to post yourself on social media, try to like create some interesting links, try to create some, it can be small. Again, we're not talking about major production. And actually, I want to like specify for the some of the students, some kids, some directors does not like edited video. They don't like high-end production, because then it's mean they want to see the real person, not movie Hollywood version, you know. So that's why sometimes it's actually they do themselves disservice if they do something very, very high-end and high, like editing, like gazillion like avatar steps like inside. So and small things like what I know is, for example, work for me when somebody write me the letter and say, oh, I look at this interview and I liked when so and so like say something, and I like what you say. So I understand, okay, person did take the time to actually research and to pay attention. And it's, I don't know, it, like for me, it does open some of the doors. And I know for a lot of the directors too, if you write something to them, say, you know, I really like your company, I've been following you for several years. The last production of, you know, I don't know, like Yuri Posakov and Yan Tan in this production was just so spectacular. It's inspired me to do something, you know. So it shows dedication. It shows this person really take the time and has actually some kind of intelligence, you know. But just make sure you don't send the letter to and say, oh, dear Mr. Carella, I absolutely adore Houston Ballet, you know. Just make sure if you address Mr. Carella, so then you put the proper information there. So, and like, I think you should try to use every opportunity you have to put yourself on display. I would say display for audition, display for the company directors or school directors, whatever you're looking for, to be noticed.
And in that way, you're talking about, for example, currently most people don't get to go in person to summer programs or wherever they would normally get that exposure, but in a Zoom class, let's say, you know, go to the Zoom classes of the companies you aspire to dance for or teachers you want to study with, show up, and as Sebastian is saying, make contact in a, you know, in a tactful way.
Be the personalities. Like, you have to stand up. Like, if you honestly, even if you come and open audition of 100 people and you stand in the last line in a very, very far corner, the chances you'll be noticed is lesser than if you try to present yourself. Again, you have to be, we're talking about proportion. You have to be careful. If you're going to be in front of everybody's face like that, people might also say, you know, like, whoa, 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 we're not sure we want to have somebody like that in our company. So I think proportion is the key, you know, and like one of my favorite quote in life is everything in life is a proportion. Everything in small quantity is medication. Everything in large quantity is poison. And I think that's what the dancer has to keep in mind. So yes, don't be in front of everybody's face like that. But also if you're going to be super, try to be unnoticeable and always in the back and super quiet and super muted, then chances you'll be noticed is also smaller.
Right. We have a question from Bridget, wondering if directors anticipate accepting audition videos and hiring dancers during the normal January through March timeline. Hope?
To be just completely honest, unsure. You know, we're still waiting to find out if we're going to even be able to do anything for Christmas season, for January season. If we are shifting the dancers' weeks of work till later to deal with pandemic restrictions, then it might be that we look to hire later. It really depends on the government guidelines and where we're going to be able to start the season. The dancers, the weeks of work are going to be honored, so that will always just shift further down the year. So I think it's a case of watch this space. Sorry, I can't be more positive.
But you know, anybody, like, if anybody tell you they know what's going to happen in March, then they're just simply lying, because none of us know what's happening. So, and the dancer just has to be ready and prepared. So wherever opportunity arises, they there. That's all they can do. Patience, patience, and patience at this particular moment. So
yeah, we're all in that boat together. Schools, I think for student dancers, it's probably more predictable than that, because schools are moving forward with online training and online summer programs.
Schools like and a lot of schools in Europe are open for the live classes, and I think schools will have a better chance to be open live sooner than the company, because we're talking about maybe like 10 people in class versus, like, you know, couple thousand people in the audience. So that's why I think schools has a very good chance.
Yeah, okay. Are there any topics we haven't covered that anyone would like to chime in on? Amy, can you think of anything?
I was just going to ask if there were any really big no-nos of what to do, like big mistakes when approaching a company to audition this way, or putting something when they're putting their materials together.
Go ahead, Chris.
So one of the things that I find, I think Hope said it earlier about doing your research before you go into a company situation. I can only really speak for my company, Dance Theater of Harlem. And when I was assisting with one of the auditions, I was honestly baffled at how many dancers of color came in pink tights and shoes. And so one of those little simple things of, when you know that this company is like, this is our trademark, you wear this is how we present ourselves, you know, you kind of have to go with that a little bit. So I think, you know, it's different now with everything being online, but still keep that in mind about how you present yourself when you come into a company. You know that a company specializes in balancing technique. Yes, you know, show your classical training, but also show that you have that in your mind, that you know that this is what they do, this is what sort of repertoire. So I think a big faux pas is to go in completely not knowing, you know, what you're getting yourself into. You should also know who your directors are and their background, and, you know, as much research as possible, I think, is always going to be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. You need to know who your audience is, 100%, and just do your research. I absolutely, totally agree. And something else that I think Sebastian said earlier about students leave school or they're looking to join a company and they have ambitions of being a principal, amazing. You know, that year when you leave your training, I think for the dancers here on this call, you probably all say we are probably in the best shapes of our lives. And then when you get into a company, it changes. The stamina changes, the length of day, how you work your technique. But when you leave school after doing all those classes, yeah, you can stand up and do Swan Queen variation, but should you really, you know, should you send that to a director? So picking something that's appropriate for your level. And of course they all have ambitions to be principals, but sometimes those roles are really, you know, to see someone too young tackling them, it doesn't give me a sense of really who they are and where they're at in their career. So just to be careful about rep appropriate as well for you. If you're a soubrette, you know, maybe don't do something, you know, Swan Queen. So.
Well, that dovetails with a question. Sorry, David, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just to hammer the point one more time about research, in mentoring some of the students here at the Collegiate Intensive, it goes beyond just getting the job or getting into the school, because to me, it has to do with how well you're going to fit in that place. And because we're lucky actually now during this Zoom time, because I think mobility, once the pandemic has actually calmed down a little bit, but I think mobility in our career will increase. But right now, or I guess before this, mobility it's very difficult to move around. It's expensive. You have to fly around to do auditions and things like that. So you may get a job in whatever company that you didn't research very well, and you may be quite unhappy. And you may not be getting cast a lot. You may not be doing roles that are very fulfilling, or you may not really enjoy the rep. Like, you just sort of happen to get the job. And I've seen colleagues spend years of a short career. So those years are extremely valuable in a place that they aren't really serving very well, because the place doesn't suit them, and the place isn't serving them well because it's just not a good fit. So again, we've hammered it 3 times now, but it's so critical to really look for places and try to put yourself in a place that's going to be fulfilling to you ultimately, because it's a bummer that it comes down to having to do the work on the front end like that and do the nitty gritty and the research, but it's so important. And your career will I promise you'll be so happy, because you'll end up in some place where you love the rep and you love the style of the director, and it'll serve you well, I promise.
100% agree. Yeah, we all we're all saying the same thing, but it is gonna make your life much more rewarding and easier and pleasant and more successful. So if before you just jump in to say, oh, I want to get it in, you don't know what exactly you're auditioning for, and you don't know what the rep is, and you might find out this rep is just not what you're looking for at all, or just very simple, it's maybe in a place where it's very cold and you're from Florida and you just simply can't deal with minus 30 degrees Celsius in the winter, and just so just the small things also make a big difference. I think the best way for dancers or students to understand, it's when you apply for college. So you don't just decide oh, I'm gonna go to this particular place. You do serious research and you pick certain amount of colleges, then you narrow them down. I have a son who is senior in high school, so we do this process now with him, and I did with my older son. So and you choose 10 colleges, then you shrink it, and then you start deciding why this one is particular place is maybe more suitable for you, and you're taking it very seriously. So, and I think that dancers has to treat the same way where they audition, and they're going to be much more successful. So they have the chances they will actually get this job, it's much higher.
We have a question. The first, this is from Javier. The first part of the question is, how important is it for a dancer to adapt to their surroundings over Zoom, which we already discussed. So Javier, I think if you rewind or watch on YouTube later, we cover that in detail. But the other question is, what's one of the most important things you are looking for in a live Zoom audition or a Zoom class for you to trust that the dancer, to trust that dancer and believe in them? Are there any like, how do you evaluate? And how do you feel confident in your evaluation over online?
Interesting.
Anybody? This would probably be for Hope, Christopher, David.
No,
I
well,
would personally think that, I would personally think that it's hard either way in person as it is over the computer. I think it's hard to understand. I mean, it's hard to say, okay, I trust that person when you look at them in one class, even if it's online or in person. I think, I don't know, I've never had to hire anybody. I've been on the other side, but I think the energy, the energy from the answer, you can feel it, even if it's through a screen or in person. But I don't know, it's just hard to answer, I guess, because I'm not a director, but you can't really trust somebody that they're going to do the job or they're going to be right for the job right away. So I think it's the same situation. Maybe in person it's a little bit easier because you see the person, face to face. But I guess, I'm sure a lot of directors have hired people that, after a year, they're like, okay, they're not the person that, the personality I was looking for this company. I'm not really sure if that's a real case.
Well, I think to Hope's point, there's no substitution for being in person to really figure out if you mesh with a person. But I actually, now that I think about Javier's question, I think that they sort of dovetail together because of what we were talking about earlier, that the way you handle your surroundings in your online audition and how you make the best of the situation does reveal a lot about you. And so I think those two things go together, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And that also is consistent with, large auditions, with hundreds of people. It's how you navigate the space and that situation, where you put yourself, to Larissa's point, are you hiding in the back, or how you dress, how you bring yourself to the front is the same, I think, in both platforms. For me, it will never finish. I never offer a job after a first audition. It would be, okay, now I stay with these 10 people and now we work together on something, and they'll learn some repertoire, there'll be some coaching. And then if if it's still important to, see them with the company, then I'll invite them to come and be with the company for a few days. So the process is going to be different with Zoom, but I still think it's going to have layers to try and find that interaction, to see if if you're a good fit, and if you can communicate well with one another, and if they have the versatility that you need for whatever repertoire, so I think it's never going to be just one Zoom class and I hire people. I can't see myself doing that.
Yeah. One thing I would like to add is that when you are teaching over Zoom, even, if the way that the student sits in the class or the way they're standing in the class, if we're having kind of like a meeting with the kids and we're just talking, the ones who are like slouched over this way and don't look as engaged, those people, honestly, I feel like I'm gonna have a harder time with, because I'm like, are you there? Are you present? Are you interested? So if you are presenting yourself in a way where you're sitting up tall and you're, focused here, and you're not like, laying down and having a coffee and all of that extra stuff. I mean, we are at home, but there's still that layer of being present. So I think, to answer your question, you don't, give full trust right away, but that does, play into it a lot. If I can see a student is meeting me in that space where they're, standing tall and focused, classes started, they're, they've logged on ahead of time, their, devices set up, they're ready, they're not like, sneaking off out of frame and stuff like that, or turning off the camera. And, those are ways, you can trust a student or a dancer over camera, is just how they're focusing in on the meeting.
Sarah is asking a really interesting question, which is, would you advise contacting company directors if you're interested in pursuing them for auditions? And the bigger question of that is, where should dancers start looking for these opportunities?
yes, just like be very, very present, follow the company, social media, follow the news, like, because nobody knows when when the new season will begin, coming back to our previous conversation. So, and that's why nobody knows when the audition season will start either. So I think you just have to be like very patient, but also very dedicated and consistent, following following what's happening around the ballet world, and making sure you don't miss this window when it is open up. So, but yes, I will say contact company directors, but it doesn't mean you will get an answer. Also be very, very realistic. So they've been bombarded by, thousands of eager dancers who's looking for place. And they also struggling to keep the dancers they already have in a company with the minimum budget everybody else has right now. So, but if you're not gonna try, you're never gonna get an answer for sure. So if you're gonna try, it's a 50-50. You might get an answer, you might not. So then my suggestion, yes, definitely try. And and again, try to, when you're gonna send your package, try to do something so we'll show the directors, like you took the time to do this package, especially for them. You did your research, you know who they are, you know who the principals, you know where they rep, you know who is the ballet masters, you know all the details which we all covered in length before. And I think that might give you this little bit leeway compared to everybody else.
I would say to add to that too, most ballet companies have a page dedicated to, audition for us, work for us, or something. You may sometimes have to search for it a little, and you have to be diligent, but just always go back and check that, because there's usually a contact email. It might not be the director, it might be their company manager or someone, an intermediate person. But you have to be a little diligent if there are companies you're really interested in to check in on their websites. And in addition to social media, as someone who gets inundated with emails from ballet companies all day, I would recommend signing up for a lot of companies have newsletters, like emailed newsletters that really kind of give you a comprehensive little snapshot of what's going on in their company, in the school, when their next performance is, what they're working on. There might be like a behind the scenes video. So that's another little extra thing that will come to your inbox, passively, where you don't have to, you should always be checking, but it's a nice helpful tool to help you kind of stay on top of what's going on. Sometimes, frequently, there are audition announcements in there, not all the time, but sometimes.
I mean, Point usually has an auditions issue.
Yes. Well,
we're converting that to online.
We are. So we are, Point, by the way, is going all online starting in fall. In the fall, we'll no longer have print available, but we do have an auditions page. If you go to our website, let me see, it is a drop down. It says guides, and then you'll see it says auditions guides. If you click on that, that's kind of regularly updated. And Dance Magazine also has a print guide with information, contact information and dates. Not sure how updated it will be this year with, everything being so disrupted, but that's another resource, that you'd have in print. But all of the dance media websites have an audition guide as well.
And I can only speak for myself, but I would anticipate that with digital auditions for companies, I think you'll find companies being very specific as to what they're looking for, just to avoid that kind of mass of trying to see everyone. I think, they will be very specific about, the level of whether they need experience, maybe a height, male or do that initial kind of cull before you get into a massive Zoom room. So because I know for myself, I wouldn't venture into it unless I really was clear about what I was looking for, just to not also waste everyone else's time.
I just posted a link in the chat to the Point article about online auditions, and there is a little section in there about how to handle the technical side, so your camera and where to put it and all of that stuff. And also it does say in there to just be really mindful of the company's specific directions. And this goes back to that David's point about company fit, that will help both sides make sure that everybody's time is being well spent.
There was one other thing, ladies, that you had asked before we got together this evening, and that was about dancers being worried about not being in the best shape of their life because they've been at home for 6 months. Again, everyone's in the same boat. I had to have the chat with my dancers today. Don't be hard on yourselves. Do send that little clip of when you were, you know, pre-COVID, when you were feeling great. But don't send a video that's 2 years old. You know, just try and keep it as close to when we all went into lockdown. We all understand, but the one thing is that, yeah, you know, sometimes directors get videos and you're like, when was this filmed? So make sure that it is as close to pre-COVID as possible. But please do not worry about feeling out of condition, because as Sebastian said as well, we can see coordination, we can see those things that are super important. And, you know, if you can get outside to do a Grand Allegro, that is also advisable, even in running shoes, because I can see coordination, I can see ballon. So, you know, it's kind of just nice to see people do different things, take the initiative.
That's a good point, Hope. I was talking to some friends the other day about this sort of scale that we all have for ourselves of like in shape versus out of shape. And in your own mind, it's huge, it's enormous. It's like, you know, I'm over here, I'm Baryshnikov, and over here, I'm like Biscuit Ballerina. It's not that big. Like it's really not. And you know, Misa Kuranaga, she's fabulous pretty much all of the time. Diego, he's terrific a lot of the time, like, you know, all of the time. The range is so small compared to how it feels, the way that we look. And I have to remind myself this too, you know, I'm creating a new ballet right now, and I'm having to dance in it just because of the COVID stuff and whatever. And I'm watching these videos back, and it's like, okay, I thought I looked pretty bad, but I don't look as bad as I thought. It's just, you know, you didn't get that bad during, yes, 6 months is a long time. And of course it's difficult to stay in great shape, but just keep in mind, it's not that wide for anybody.
Well, I think overall the message is one of hope and positivity, and that there are opportunities, and that, again, we're all in this together and we're all in the same boat. So, are there any final thoughts that anyone would like to add before we wrap up?
I would like to suggest for dancers, because again, the future is so unpredictable. And for example, if you're in a studio right now and you do have access to the studio and you more or less in a shape, then film something like now when you have the access to it, because 2 months later you might not. So, and then if 2 months later you still have access and you think you're in a better shape, then you do again a new video, you know, more updated one. And but just like, because none of us know how long it will be there, and so use as much opportunity as you have. So, and if, like I say, if you're inside the studio, I would film like every couple of weeks. And again, cell phone, you know, we're not talking about any camera or light or anything, you know, just like simple cell phone. So, but that's will kind of also show you how you're progressing, and you'll have most update footage in case you need it.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody. I hope this was really valuable for our viewers. I know it was really great to be together, such as we can be. So,
thank you so much for putting
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
thank you,
Thanks,
Diego,
Claudia.
Worldwide Ballet Class, and Ruben.
Yes.
You guys are amazing.
Of course, chavales, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
everybody, take good care. Stay safe.
Take
Keep
care.
dancing.
Bye.
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 Everyone.